Every one of these places was once full of life. People woke up here, went to work here, raised their children here. And then, for 5 very different reasons, every single one of them was abandoned, left almost exactly as it stood. A town that caught fire from below and never stopped burning. A city of diamonds, slowly swallowed by the desert. An island so crowded it became the most densely packed place on Earth, until, almost overnight, everyone left. A modern city frozen by the worst nuclear disaster in history, and a glittering holiday paradise sealed behind a fence for 50 years, where the people who fled are still to this day waiting to go home. Some were taken in a single day. Others were swallowed so slowly no one noticed until it was too late. These are 5 cities the world walked away from, and the strange, human reasons why. We're counting them down, from 5 to 1. We begin in the hills of Pennsylvania, in a small American coal town called Centralia. In the early 1960s, around 1,500 people lived here. It had streets and shops, churches and schools. An ordinary town sitting on top of one of the richest coal deposits in the country. And that coal, buried in a maze of old mines beneath the town, is what would destroy it. In May 1962, the town lit a fire to clean up its landfill, an ordinary chore. But the landfill sat over an old mine pit, and the flames found their way down into the abandoned coal tunnels below. Once the fire reached the coal seams, it could not be put out. It spread underground, through miles of tunnels, and began to burn its way beneath the streets, slowly, invisibly, and completely out of control. For years, people learned to live with it. The warm ground, the strange smell, the wisps of smoke. Until Valentine's Day, 1981. A 12-year-old boy named Todd Domboski was crossing his grandmother's yard when the ground simply opened beneath him. He dropped into a sinkhole nearly 150 feet deep, filling with hot, poisonous gas. He survived only by clinging to a tree root until his cousin dragged him out. That was the moment the nation finally understood. Centralia could not be saved. 2 years later, the government set aside $42 million to buy the whole town and move everyone out. One by one, the homes came down. Churches vanished. Schools vanished. In 2002, the Postal Service erased Centralia's zip code from the map, as if the town had never existed. Today, only a small handful of stubborn residents remain, living in a town where, just beneath their feet, the earth is still quietly on fire. But the town did not die quickly. It was dismantled, slowly, by law. In 1992, the state invoked eminent domain and condemned every single building in Centralia. Around 500 structures were pulled down, and the streets were left running between empty lots. A handful of residents refused to go and fought it in court. In 2013, they finally reached an agreement with the state. They could stay in their homes for the rest of their lives. But when the last of them dies, every remaining property reverts to the state, and the town is finished. Fewer than 10 people live there now. Centralia is, in the most literal sense, a town with an expiry date, waiting for its last resident to die. In the years after the town emptied, Centralia took on a strange afterlife. A stretch of old Route 61, cracked open by the heat, was covered end to end in graffiti and became a pilgrimage site for the curious, until it, too, was buried over. The town's eerie fate is even said to have helped inspire the fog-bound ghost town of the video game and film Silent Hill. But beneath the sightseeing lies the hard truth. The fire still burns across an 8-mile stretch of coal, and by some estimates has enough fuel to keep burning for another 250 years. Centralia was taken by fire, but our fourth city was taken by something slower and far more patient: sand. Deep in the Namib Desert of southern Africa lies the skeleton of a town that was, for a brief moment, one of the richest places on the continent. In 1908, a railway worker found a diamond simply lying in the sand. Word spread like wildfire, and a diamond rush began. Out of the empty desert rose Kolmanskop, an elegant German town dropped impossibly into the dunes. And the wealth here was staggering. In the middle of one of the driest deserts on Earth, the diamond money built grand houses, a ballroom, a theater, and a hospital, which is said to have had the first X-ray machine in the southern hemisphere. Fresh water and blocks of ice were hauled across the sand by the ton. Champagne was more common than water. For a few short years, this tiny town in the dunes lived like a corner of Europe that had wandered into the desert and forgotten to leave, and for a while they built as if it would never end. There was a school, a hospital, a casino, a ballroom, and a theater, and even a bowling alley out here in a desert where nothing grows. Fresh water had to be shipped in and hauled across the dunes. Every household is said to have received a daily delivery of ice, carried to the door like milk. It was one of the wealthiest square miles on the African continent, built on stones picked out of the sand by hand. But the diamonds did not last. As the easy gems were dug out, and far larger deposits were found to the south, the fortune that built Kolmanskop drained away. By the middle of the century, the town was simply abandoned. The people packed up and left it to the desert. And the desert wasted no time. With no one to hold it back, the sand began to move in. Today it has poured through the doors and windows and never stopped, climbing the walls of the ballrooms, filling entire rooms waist-deep and higher. Grand houses now stand with dunes flowing through their hallways, as if the desert is slowly drinking the town back down. And what the desert does here is not gentle. The wind in the Namib blows in one direction day after day, year after year, and it carries sand the way a river carries silt. Once nobody was left to sweep the doorsteps. The sand simply walked in. It came through the windows first, then the doorways. Then it began to climb. Today you can stand in what was once a dining room and find the dune higher than your waist, still moving, still rising. Photographers now travel from all over the world for one particular image. A doorway half buried, with a slope of golden sand pouring through it into a room where somebody once ate dinner. Kolmanskop is not really a ruin. It is a town being slowly eaten. And here is the strangest part. Even now you cannot simply drive to Kolmanskop. The town sits inside the Sperrgebiet, the Forbidden Zone, a vast stretch of the Namibian coast still controlled as a restricted diamond area, guarded by security gates to this day. A ghost town, abandoned for its lost diamonds, and still sealed off because of the diamonds that might remain. Kolmanskop was swallowed over decades, but our third city was emptied in a matter of months. 9 miles off the coast of Nagasaki, Japan, a strange gray shape rises straight out of the sea. From a distance, it looks like a battleship, which earned it its nickname, Gunkanjima. But it is not a ship. It is an island of solid concrete, and it was once the most crowded place on the entire planet. Beneath Hashima lay rich seams of undersea coal. To mine it, the Mitsubishi Company turned this bare rock into a fortress of concrete, building in 1916 one of the very first large reinforced concrete apartment blocks in all of Japan. High-rises were packed wall to wall. At its peak, in 1959, more than 5,000 people were crammed onto an island you could walk across in minutes, the highest population density ever recorded anywhere on Earth. There were schools, shops, a hospital, a cinema. There was so little bare ground that children played on the rooftops and gardens were planted in the sky. And the work beneath them was brutal. The shafts ran as deep as a kilometer below the seabed, into tunnels where the temperature sat around 30 degrees and the humidity reached 95%. Men worked half naked in the dark, in air thick enough to drown in. The staircase that ran from the mine up to the top of the island had a nickname among the residents. They called it the Stairway to Hell. Over 84 years, Hashima produced somewhere in the region of 16 million tons of coal, fuel that helped power Japan's transformation into an industrial superpower. But Hashima also holds a darker history. During the Second World War, Korean and Chinese laborers were forced to work in its mines under brutal conditions, a chapter that would later make the island's World Heritage status deeply controversial. Then, in the 1960s, Japan turned from coal to oil. The mine's days were numbered, and when it finally closed in 1974, the island emptied almost overnight. Within months, every resident was gone, leaving furniture, belongings, whole lives behind. And the ending, when it came, was astonishingly fast. Mitsubishi announced the mine's closure at a ceremony in the island gymnasium in January 1974. Within weeks, the families began to leave, block by block, boat by boat. By the 20th of April, barely 3 months later, the last resident stepped onto a ferry, and an island that had held 5,000 people was completely empty. They left behind furniture, televisions, toys, dishes still in the cupboards. There was no room on the boats for a life, and then, for 35 years, Hashima simply vanished from the world. From the day it closed in 1974, the island was declared completely off-limits. No visitors, no tours, nothing but the sea and the slow work of decay. It was not until 2009 that it cautiously reopened, and even now only strictly controlled boat tours are allowed, reaching just a few safe viewpoints. Around 95% of the island remains sealed off, too fragile, too dangerous, its typhoon-battered towers crumbling a little more with every storm. Today, the sea and the wind are tearing Hashima apart, concrete crumbling into the waves, floors open to the sky, an entire vertical city slowly collapsing back into the ocean that surrounds it. It has appeared in films and been named a World Heritage Site, but behind the fame it remains what it is, a crowded world that emptied in a heartbeat. Hashima ran out of coal. Our next city was abandoned in a single day, because to stay would mean death. Our second city was, for its time, a dream. Pripyat, in what is now Ukraine, was built in 1970, a brand new modern city designed from scratch for the workers of a nearby power station and their families. It had wide boulevards, fresh apartment blocks, schools, a hospital, a cinema. Nearly 50,000 people lived here, most of them young, with an average age of around 26. And in the spring of 1986, a brand new amusement park with a bright yellow Ferris wheel stood ready to open. That power station was Chernobyl. On the 26th of April, 1986, reactor number 4 exploded, the worst nuclear accident in history. Just over a kilometer away, the people of Pripyat could see a strange glow in the night sky, not knowing that the very air had turned deadly. Extraordinarily, they were not moved that night. Life went on for another full day. It was only around 36 hours later that the buses finally came. Residents were told to bring documents and food for a few days. They locked their doors, expecting to be back within the week. The evacuation itself is almost impossible to picture. Around 1,200 buses were gathered from across the region and sent into the city in a single convoy, a line of vehicles stretching for kilometers along the road to Pripyat. At 2 o'clock in the afternoon, they began loading. Residents were told to bring their documents and enough food for 3 days. Families locked their front doors, left the washing on the line, left dinner in the fridge. In under 3 hours, a city of nearly 50,000 people was completely empty. And there is one detail that makes it worse. That amusement park, with the yellow Ferris wheel, had been due to open to the public that week, on the 1st of May. The children of Pripyat were evacuated 4 days before they were ever allowed to ride it. They never came back. Nearly 50,000 people lost their home in a single afternoon. A vast exclusion zone was drawn around the city, and Pripyat was sealed away from the world. But nature did not stay away. In the decades since, the forest has poured back in. Trees split the pavements, wild boar and wolves move through the empty apartment blocks, and rare wild horses now graze where children once played. That bright yellow Ferris wheel still stands over it all, having never once carried a passenger. Cleaning up the disaster took an army. Hundreds of thousands of workers, remembered as the liquidators, were sent in to fight the invisible enemy and seal the ruined reactor beneath a vast shell of concrete and steel. Pripyat, meanwhile, became the most famous forbidden city on Earth, a place people now travel from around the world just to glimpse, cameras in hand, walking the silent streets of a city that will not be safe to truly live in for generations. Some of them did come back, briefly. That summer, residents were bussed to the edge of the exclusion zone, issued overalls, shoe covers, and respirators, and escorted into their own apartments for 3 or 4 hours to take what they could carry. Anything too contaminated had to stay. People chose between a photograph album and a winter coat. Then they were driven back out, and the doors were closed behind them for good. A handful of elderly people eventually crept back past the checkpoints to live out their lives in the only home they had ever known, in the shadow of the disaster. Pripyat is a monument to a single, terrible day, and to how fragile the modern world really is. Our final city was abandoned more than a decade earlier, but its story is, in a way, even sadder. Because its people never stopped waiting to go home, and so we reach number 1. On the coast of Cyprus, in the city of Famagusta, there was once a place people called the French Riviera of the Mediterranean, Varosha. In the 1960s and early 70s, it was one of the most glamorous beach resorts on Earth, a golden strip of modern high-rise hotels along a perfect beach. Film stars and the wealthy of the world came to be seen here. Screen legends of the age were said to have holidayed on this very sand. It was, quite simply, paradise. Then came the summer of 1974. War broke out on the island, and as the fighting reached Famagusta, the entire population of Varosha fled for their lives, expecting, like so many others in this list, to return within days. They never got the chance. The area was fenced off, sealed shut, and placed under military control. And there it has stayed, frozen, ever since. Behind that fence, time simply stopped. Shop windows kept the fashions of 1974. Cars were left to rust where they were parked. Hotels stood frozen mid-season, waiting for guests who never arrived, while trees grew up through the ballrooms and the famous beach turned wild and empty. For decades, no one was allowed in at all. Then, in 2020, the authorities controlling the north reopened part of Varosha to visitors, a move condemned by the United Nations and much of the international community, and one that remains bitterly disputed to this day. For nearly 50 years, this was a forbidden zone in the most literal sense, ringed by fences and soldiers, where even pointing a camera could get you arrested. Behind the wire, dozens of grand hotels and countless homes and shops were left to rot, street after street of them, an entire district of a modern city frozen in a single summer. Estimates to ever restore it run into the billions, and still, the fundamental question hangs unanswered. Who does Varosha belong to now? And can the people who fled it ever truly come home? And the scale of what was locked away is hard to grasp. This was not a village. Varosha was the tourist engine of the entire island. Street after street of hotels, apartment blocks, restaurants, cinemas, and shops, built for tens of thousands of visitors a season. Some of its newest hotels had opened only months before the fighting, and at least one was still unfinished, its scaffolding never taken down. In a single summer, an entire modern district, the most valuable real estate in Cyprus, stopped and stayed stopped for half a century. But here is what makes Varosha the saddest of all 5. Unlike a fire, or a reactor, or a played-out mine, nothing here was ever truly destroyed. The city is still standing, and many of the people who fled it are still alive today, elderly now, carrying the keys to homes they have watched, from behind a fence, slowly crumble for half a century. 50 years later, they are still waiting to go home. Because the people are still here. Not in Varosha, but around it. Many of the families who fled in 1974 settled only a few miles away, close enough to see the skyline of their own town on the horizon. They watched their apartment blocks lose their windows. They watched the roofs go. Some of them still hold the deeds to properties they have not entered in 50 years, and the keys to front doors that no longer open onto anything. Children who were carried out of Varosha in their parents' arms are now grandparents themselves. An entire lifetime has passed on one side of a fence, while the other side simply stopped. And there is something the 5 of them share, beyond the endings. In every single case, the people who lived there expected to come back. The residents of Centralia thought the fire would be put out. The families of Kolmanskop assumed the diamonds would last. The workers of Hashima believed the coal would never run out. The people of Pripyat were told 3 days. The people of Varosha packed for a week. Not one of these towns was abandoned by a decision anybody made on the day they left. They were abandoned slowly, in hindsight, by a return that never happened. 5 cities. 5 completely different endings. Fire, sand, the sea, a reactor, and a war. But every one of them tells the same quiet truth. The world we build around us, the streets and homes and lives we think are permanent, can be handed back to nature or to silence in a single generation. Sometimes in a single day. These places are not just ruins. They are reminders of how much we build and how quickly it can be left behind. But I want to hear from you. Of these 5, which one would you dare to walk through yourself? And which would you never, ever set foot in? Tell me your number 1 and your never down in the comments. I read them. If you'd like the full story of any one of these places, we've told the complete story of Varosha in its own episode. You'll find it on screen now. And next time, we'll uncover another place the world left behind. Stay with us.